Welcome back to Packs and Picks, and welcome to our first sealed deck build video for the new set Tarkir Dragonstorm. In the previous video, I opened 6 packs of the new set. I've gone through all the cards, and I've got an idea of the deck that I want to build. So let's dive into it and see what we've got to work with. The first thing I noticed when I was going through the cards was in this pool we had a lot of black and green interactions, specifically like removal spells. So we had things like Sarkhan's Resolve, Salt Road Skirmish, Dragon's Prey, Worthy Cost, 2 Caustic Exhale, and then we had 2 Disruptive Storm Broods, so some 3/3 dragons that if we cast them early we can destroy small creatures. So this was the first thing that jumped out to me when I was going through the pool thinking about what I wanted to build, and black-green seemed like a good direction to go based off of just all this removal that we have in the pool. So from there, I was thinking, okay, am I either going to go Sultai and go into blue, or am I going to go Abzan and go into white? So I looked at Sultai first, and we do have some good Sultai cards, and things like Fangkeeper's Familiar lets us potentially surveil or counter a creature spell. Gurmag Nightwatch lets us look at cards and dump more into our graveyard. Rakshasa's Bargain, same thing, look at cards to get some into our graveyard. But when I looked at the overall pool, we had a lot of things that dumped into our graveyard, but not a lot of payoffs for having cards into our graveyard. So not a lot of reanimate strategies or things that got stuff out of the graveyard. We did have a couple, stuff like Aegis Sculptor here, which lets us exile 2 cards from our graveyard once a turn, get a 1/1 counter, make this guy a little bit bigger. We also had like an Auroral Procession, lets us dig out of our graveyard. And the Keru Goldkeeper that lets us make treasures when things leave our graveyard. But as far as like the big payoffs or the synergies for having things in our graveyard, didn't really have that in the build for Sultai. And that's what I would want to see if we were going to lean more into Sultai. And then on top of that, our mana base really didn't allow us to go into Sultai at all. And if we were just looking at the mana base and kind of trying to listen to the heart of the cards and see what our mana base wants us to go into, really it would be Mardu. So these were a good selection of our multicolored lands that we had in the pool. And if I was just looking at this, I would say, man, can I make a Mardu deck work? Because the fixing I have for Mardu looks pretty excellent. So no on the Sultai. When I looked at my lands, I looked at this, I thought maybe I should take a look at Mardu and see if there's something in Mardu that I like the look of or that would pull me away from black and green. So just as a quick aside, we can take a peek at what Mardu had to offer. We got the Bone Cairn Butcher, 4/4 with Mobilize, Shock Brigade, making Mobilize tokens. We had 2 of these Underfoot Underdogs, which are creating tokens, making our small things unblockable. And then we had some removal in Twin Bolt, Molten Exhale, and Twin Maw Stormbrood, which these are all cards that I like in the Mardu shell, but we didn't have a lot of Mobilize or small token generation in the rest of white or black. So it didn't convince me enough to get off of the green-black train that I had started on when I was looking at the pool. So Mardu, I think you can definitely make a white-black-red deck with this pool of cards, but it wasn't enough really to convince me to go over to Mardu. But the mana's there. There's some good cards there. I definitely think you wouldn't be at fault for making a Mardu deck with these cards. So that kind of left me with Abzan, and that was the direction I went. And I actually ended up going mostly just green-black because the white that I had wasn't quite enough to splash for. And you'll see as I lay out the mana base here in a second, there wasn't a lot of mana fixing for white in our sealed pool. So I'll go ahead and lay things out here by cost. Get some more spells in here, and we'll take a look at what we've got to work with. All right, so as I was building the deck, I just, on the back really again of all this removal, I thought, really I'm thinking about a controlling shell for Abzan, not so much the tokens and the counter strategy that Abzan wants to do. So I was really leaning into the removal and thinking, how can I get a good defensive board state early on and then control the board and then hopefully close out the game with some finishers at the top end. So notable inclusions for this deck, I'm trying out 2 copies of the Crotic Nest Guard. So 3 cost 4/4 Defender. So this is really going to stall out the ground, help us control the ground, and potentially later on we can pay that mana when we can afford it more to let the Crotic Nest Guard get in. So we've got a couple of those. We also have Kintry Nurturer, a 2/1 lifelink, potentially could be a bigger lifelink creature, help us stay alive, and the Nightblade Brigade with Death Touch, which also helps shore up the ground. And along with shoring up the ground, we've got 1 Dragon Sniper, 1/1 with Vigilance, Reach, and Death Touch. So nothing's really getting through the Dragon Sniper, so another way that we can hold off on the ground until we can control the board and get into the late game. As far as some other notable inclusions, so we've got the Yathan Road Watcher. This was one of our rares. So just a 3/3 that lets us mill some cards and gets back maybe a Crotic Nest Guard or one of these cheaper creatures for us. And then I also included a splash of the Glacierwood Siege. I could see this being another win condition for us. We've got a lot of instants and sorceries in the deck, and so I would play this on the Teamer mode, which says whenever you cast an instance or sorcery spell, target player mills 4 cards. So because we are going the long strategy here, we are trying to play a lot of removal spells. We do have a decent number of instants and sorceries. I could see milling out our opponent maybe being an alternate win condition for us. And so I'm splashing for the Glacierwood Siege here. And even though I've only got the dedicated instance down here, Sagu Wildling, that has a sorcery on one side. We've got our 2 Disruptive Storm Broods. Those have a sorcery on their Omen side that would help count towards that Glacierwood Siege. So that's why I splashed for Glacierwood Siege. And then as far as the mana goes, we saw our Scoured Barrens from earlier, but we've also got a Blossoming Sands. And then I've got the Frontier Bivouac and the Tranquil Cove as helping us get to our blue splash and also supporting our little bit of white we have in Osseous Exhale, Reputable Merchant, and the Yathan Road Watcher. So that's it. That's the first sealed pool for Tarkir Dragonstorm. Let me know what you think of this deck. Let me know what you think of the pool. What did you like in the pool? What did you potentially build out of this pool? And stick around because we've got more sealed pools for Tarkir Dragonstorm coming up. I'll see you soon.